So American pork producers have long kept their sows in cramped crates and stalls with so little space they can't even turn around. But there are signs that the tides are turning in the pork industry. Pretty interesting stuff. Joining the table now to weigh in on the impact of this trend, we've got the president and CEO of the Humane Society of the U.S., Wayne Pacelli, and culinary chef joining the table, Aaliyah Li Kong. I said that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank God. All right, so Gene is also with us and Joe is here too. So let's talk about this because oh, and excuse me, and the chef and owner of Craft Restaurants, Tom Colicchio. Tom, sorry, I almost forgot. You're joining us from Boston. Forgive me.
Lead here, man.
Yeah, forgive me.
Lead. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about why we're seeing such a change here. And Wayne, let me ask you, because we seem to have tried to put the genie back in the bottle when it comes to the regulations that are going forward with this. So explain how you're making these changes, how the tide is turning.
Well, I think the American public cares about animals. We have anti-cruelty statutes in every state in the country, and if you logically apply anti-cruelty principles, it means we've got to think about animals in agriculture. And when you look at what's happening in agriculture, we've had an incredible transformation over the last 50 years. Animals used to be outside, they had access to pasture, they could feel sunlight on their backs and soil beneath their feet. They've been moved into these huge warehouses, and sometimes within the warehouses, in the case of breeding sows in the pig industry, they're confined in a crate that's 2 feet wide, about as wide as my shoulders, 7 feet long, and these are 400, 500-pound animals, and they're in there basically for 3 years of their life immobilized. And I think for anyone who cares about animals, that's a moral problem.
Yeah. Joe, did you want to ask Tom a question?
Well, Tom, talk about it. Why is it important?
Well, it's important for all the reasons that Wayne just mentioned, but you know, what's really happening here is you have 60 major U.S. companies, including McDonald's and ConAgra, Target, who are pressuring these pork producers, and they're yielding to pressure from sort of everyday people who are really, they care about how their food is raised, they care about farm workers' rights, they care about animal rights, and so you see the pressure coming from the consumer, and you know, if you look at this, there's so many ballot initiatives that I think Wayne can talk about in various states that are also putting pressure on us as well, and so you see sort of you know, consumer demand in action here.
Well, so is the situation, the living situation for sows worse than, say, the living situation for cows? Wayne?
Yeah, Joe, you know, the veal calves, the young male calves raised for veal, are kind of the iconic symbol of extreme confinement. Yeah. And the veal industry is switching because of public pressure. In terms of cattle, those animals raised for beef, they're typically raised in extensive systems where the animals are outside. The worst situation is for the laying hens in the egg industry. They're crammed into what are called battery cages. These breeding sows in the pork industry and the veal calves. But we're seeing great change. And the fact that Cargill, which is a huge agribusiness company, has moved on this issue, I think is a sign of the times.
Oh, explain about that, because are we really seeing the push coming from the consumer, that voices have gathered enough strongly to have the people that are in charge provide a better product and give people the peace of mind at home that they want to invest in that product?
Yeah, I think this is an area where business is also aligned with humanity and with good practices. You know, we're seeing people just want to get a better product. At the end of the day, these types of conditions breed disease. There's waste and leakage into groundwater. There's pollution and greenhouse gases that are produced from these types of scenarios. There's antibiotic resistance that comes up. I think this is an area where we can really achieve cost savings. There's 20% slippage where 20% of the pigs die just from the conditions. I think this is an area where business is going to improve from an efficiency standpoint by better practices.
And Gene and I were talking, you know, we're disassociated from our food system.
Well, we are.
Absolutely.
We're not in touch with our dinner, and you know, in some other places, people are. I wanted to ask Tom Colicchio: do diners want to be more in touch with their dinner and more knowledgeable about the conditions under which the animals were raised?
They do. I think consumers want to know, number one, where the food is coming from, how it's raised, who is raising it, the conditions that they're being raised, and it goes from animals to also also fish, and also produce. I think there's a huge movement. You know, if you look at the food movement, it started around 30 years ago. It's really a social movement. It's a sort of a loose group of sort of organized group that is focusing on social issues around food. And I think it's really turned into a full-blown political movement. And I think as the food movement is growing up, they're realizing that if they want these gains, they actually have to work through the political system. So there's just a huge awareness. And, you know, it's happening when you have organizations like Food Policy Action, Humane Society working on these, groups like Food Democracy Now! And Civil Eats, and you have Mary Nestle writing about food. And so many people are just sort of focused on you know, this important thing. 3 times a day, and sometimes more than that, we put food into our systems, and yet we're not sort of focused on where this is how it's being raised, and what impact it's having on the environment, and also the impact it's having on our bodies. And so, you know, the time has come, and so this is great to see. This is great news for the food movement.
All right, we'll continue.
Yeah, I think it is. And you know, Tom, you and I actually tweet back and forth.
We do
all the time about a guy, Paul McCartney, who's been talking about this issue for a very long time, and talked about it on humanitarian issues. I'm kind of surprised that your favorite Wings song ever, or McCartney solo song, is Magneto and Titanium Man?
It's a great song. Come on, Joe. It's a great song.
I love it, but is it better than Maybe I'm Amazed?
Maybe not. Maybe not. I was just being a contrarian there. You know, I knew no one was going to mention it, so I had to give it a shout out.
You are a contrarian, but I think it's safe, and Paul McCartney's been talking about this for some time, and I think if we all saw, you know, what we ate and how it was raised, I think a lot of us, more of us would be vegetarians probably. So this is a very, very positive development. Tom, thank you so much for being with us. Wayne, we appreciate it as well.
Thanks.
And Leah, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here. Your book is Exotic Table, and Andy Mendelson says hello. Coming up next.